as little kids, we were told that if you think something wrong, if you do something wrong, you will break God's heart. People talk about, the fear of going to hell. And I'm sorry, my first response was, if it was only me in hell, that would have been much easier than I am responsible for God's suffering and pain. We were taught, as many people were, like, if you ever question anything, it's Satan inside of you,
Mhm.
right? Trying to win you back so you never think for yourself. When my mom left, my parents split up when I was very young. We were living with my grandfather and my mom's mom because of stuff that had happened. And she sat us down and said, me and my brother, she said, I think I need to be more involved. What do you two think I should do? And we said, you should leave us and go move into the church full time, right? And the number of people who said, thank you for your sacrifice. You're so amazing for your ability to give up your mom. So if I missed my mom, I was sinful. Like, these are all the actually taught in the water you drink and the air you breathe, ways that it just ties you in a knot. So the ability to get right, yeah, I'm 61 and I'm learning to cry and I'm learning to get angry and I'm learning to stop saying, am I allowed to do that?
Hello, Lisa Kohn. Welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing great and nice to see you, Ryan, and thank you for having me here.
I'm so happy to finally have you on the show. I've been following you on Instagram, on social media. I even have your book, and we've been interacting on social media for quite some time, and schedules can be very difficult, but it's an honor to finally have you here on the Truth That Heals podcast.
Thank you. I am excited to be here and to maybe give some truth that can help heal.
I love it. So
Yeah.
let's get started. So first off, to the audience, I'm here with Lisa. She is the author, the writer of To the Moon and Back, a childhood under the influence. And if you're watching the YouTube version or the Spotify video version, I have a copy of her book, and we're going to be getting into that and in the life of Lisa. So before we even really dive into the book, can you give us a little background of your story?
Yeah, so the way I describe my childhood is the best seats I ever had at Madison Square Garden were at my mother's wedding because my mom got married on July 1st, 1982, along with 2,075 other couples in Madison Square Garden. And for those of you who might not know what that means, this was a long time ago. I was a member of the Unification Church, the Moonies, best friends with his kids. That was my life. And on the other hand, the best cocaine I ever had was from my father's friend, the judge, yes, he really was a judge. I lived that like 1970s duality of religious fervor and cult on one side and sex, drugs, and rock and roll on the other side with my two parents. So I am a child of the 60s and 70s, but that's the story. Basically, and I can go into as much detail whenever you want. My mom, I was not born. I am raised. My mom joined when I was 10 and my older brother was 11. The Unification Church, the Moonies, heard Moon speak, was enthralled and joined and basically left us to join. And it was a haven when we first got there, and it was wonderful in so many ways to a little kid. It was safer than much of what we'd experienced. And again, it was my life. It was everything. And then, very long story, I left somewhere between the age of 18 and 21, 22. My brother says, you never left, you just slowly pulled away. And that process, as many people know, was hard and horrific. And I punished myself for years for failing and falling and all of that. And now well, I'll be 61 tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me. Crazy. And live a life of more joy, more love, more self-love, self-compassion than I didn't even know I didn't have it, so I never even knew it was possible to have it. So that's a really big, broad
Mm.
synopsis of me. And I will go. Also, I own a leadership consulting and executive coaching firm in my day job. So I actually now use the truths I learned to heal from how I grew up and all the work I do as well. But that's the broad stroke of Lisa, and I'll go anywhere that's helpful for you to take me.
Well, Lisa, it sounds like you've been very busy and doing a lot of amazing work, sharing your message, sharing your truth. And I wanted to go back to your childhood because you mentioned that you weren't born, but you were raised in it later on.
Yeah.
Uh, Initially, it seemed to be like a safe haven, but Was there a moment where you felt that this isn't a safe haven?
Um, no, because I was one of those people when I left who still thought Moon was the Messiah. I just didn't want to do it. So it wasn't that it wasn't safe, it's that I was unworthy, failing, breaking God's heart, not living up to what I was supposed to, not being, the problem was me, not the church, the cult. And it took me, I mean, I like literally I left again. It all started around 16, but it was 18 to 21. And at the age of like 27 or something, I was engaged to an active alcoholic, and someone pointed me to Al-Anon, and I went, go to my first meeting going, tell me if he's an alcoholic. There's no way I would ever be an alcoholic, would be with an alcoholic because I was fine, I thought. And I remember walking to the room, looking at these people thinking they have such low self-esteem and they're not as healthy as me. I mean, I had no blanking clue what was going on in my head because one of my coping mechanisms is to just do fine no matter what.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then it took me a long time to realize that there was something wrong there, and it honestly wasn't until the book came out in 2018 when I found the cult survivor community, and especially the community of second gens, those of us born and or raised. And at first, I had to feel worthy enough to be part of it because I wasn't born. More hypocritical bullshit from the church, and it was only then that I really started to go, oh my, like what was actually done to my brain, our brains intentionally done when we were supposed to be developing is horrific. But I had no idea, if that makes any sense.
No, this makes a lot of sense, and I can relate. And all that you're saying, it's so relatable because for me, as a ex-cult member, when I left, it was all everything was my fault. I'm unworthy. So I'm so interested in kind of finding out what steps did you take after leaving or separating yourself from the group to rewire your way of thinking, and how did it lead to you writing a book? So let's start off with because that thought of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, it was really cemented, and I'm imagining it was really cemented in your mind. So can you walk us through a bit of that journey?
Yeah, I wouldn't even, it's like beyond cemented sometimes, right? So, I mean, I went, when the book came out, I was on the Megyn Kelly show, when there was a Megyn Kelly show. And when they interviewed me beforehand, they said, were you brainwashed? And I said, I didn't have a brain to be washed. I was pickled, I was carved, I was groomed, right? And so I, uh, I don't even remember where I was going with this. My brain fits out sometimes. So I just didn't even realize the level of self-loathing and self-revulsion that was baked, carved, groomed, cemented, concreted into my very being. My story is that when I started to leave, I went off to university in upstate New York, and one of the first things I did was stand on the bridge and almost jump because it was better to die than to choose to leave. I obviously didn't. But that whole sense of, again, it's my fault. There's something wrong with me. I'm abandoning God. I'm abandoning the Messiah. And I realized, my recovery has gone many, many levels and deeper and deeper and deeper, especially after the book came out. And I used to think that my main, you know, lie tape in my brain was I'm not enough. And I realized that my main lie tape in my brain was that I should have died. I should have jumped. I didn't deserve to live. And to give the actual depths of my self-loathing, I guess, I don't know if you've ever watched the Harry Potter movies, take aside all the stuff about that. And the last one, when Voldemort becomes this like disgusting little blobby kind of baby, kind of gross rub thing, that's what I felt I was inside, deep, deep, deep down, which is so, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, go ahead.
So not fucking true. So not fucking true, right? And so the ability to like to see that that was there and to begin to unwire, uncarve. I got a lot of tools and a lot of work, but undo all of that. First acknowledging it was done, and then the impact of what it was done and then figuring out a way out. I will say that my older child read the book when it was a manuscript and then read it again when it was already a book. And like they annotated because that's my kid. And they called me and they're like, let's talk. And we got to the point where I wrote about meeting their dad. And I shared my scars and my demons, and I was certain I would scare him away when he saw how damaged I was. And my kid said, what the fuck? And I was like, damn, not only did I believe that when I wrote it in like 2009-ish, I guess, I believed it when it came out in 2018, or I would have put a little caveat like, this is not true. And that's only 5 years ago that I still thought there was something wrong with me because of the trauma I'd experienced, as opposed to I have experienced trauma and I'm beautiful. And oh, the little voice is like, we're all beautiful. We are all beautiful, right? But the ability to say, I am beautiful and I am precious and I am enough and I am all those things, which we weren't allowed to say, right? I wasn't allowed to say,
Yeah.
you weren't allowed to say, weren't allowed to have, weren't allowed to believe. Yeah. So it's been a very long, deep, a lot of work, a lot of pain, learning to grieve, learning to cry, learning to get angry. This is my anger necklace to remind me to embrace my anger. I wear it every day, like learning all those things that I never was allowed to do. It wasn't safe. So, did I answer your question? Kind of.
Yes, yeah, kind of. I think you did,
Kind
and
of.
you
Kind
you
of.
you you brought an interesting, you brought in something interesting because you mentioned the word, the lies of
Mhm.
I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy, and I say it's very peculiar because this is called the truth that heals, and with you have a truth, but there's also lies that exist. So, what are some other lies that were perhaps fed to you during your time in this community that took you a while to perhaps release or remove from your life?
Well, the first one is that Moon was the Messiah. But that's, whatever. I mean, and literally when I started speaking out, when the book came out and I would start speaking out, people would ask me about Moon. And if I was going to say something negative, I literally could not talk. My brain would just freeze and because I was so conditioned, to not speak ill of him. The lies. So I love this one because I shocked my therapist with this recently. So in the Bible, when Abraham sacrifices Isaac, right? Most people are taught that Abraham sacrificed his child. We were taught that Isaac knew and therefore lay himself down willingly on the altar to be sacrificed, right? We were taught that, the more you suffer, the greater the sacrifice for God, the happier God is, right? We were taught, the individual sacrifices for the family sacrifices for the society. We were taught to have no wants, no needs. We were taught that women should be object and underneath men. We were taught that Korean is the language of the kingdom of heaven in the best culture. I mean, we were taught, not even taught, but again, that sense, like as little kids, we were told that if you think something wrong, if you do something wrong, you will break God's heart. People talk about, the fear of going to hell. And I'm sorry, my first response was, if it was only me in hell, that would have been much easier than I am responsible for God's suffering and pain. We were taught, as many people were, like, if you ever question anything, it's Satan inside of you, right? Trying to win you back so you never think for yourself. When my mom left, my parents split up when I was very young. We were living with my grandfather, my mom's mom, because of stuff that had happened. And she sat us down and said, me and my brother, she said, I think I need to be more involved. What do you two think I should do? And we said, you should leave us and go move into the church full time, right? And the number of people who said, thank you for your sacrifice. You're so amazing for your ability to give up your mom. So if I missed my mom, I was sinful. Like these are all the actually taught in the water you drink and the air you breathe, ways that it just ties you in a knot. So the ability to get right, yeah, I'm 61 and I'm learning to cry and I'm learning to get angry and I'm learning to stop saying, am I allowed to do that? Right? All those things that were huge compassion, absolutely what I had to do in order to survive, what I had to do in order to survive. So I have another second gen friend who taught me many years ago to say that's the cult talking to all those lies. And I mean, I actually literally use that in my work. I say, take out the word cult and put in whatever works for you. But the ability to say that's not, it's real, but it's not true. It's a feeling, but it's not actually true. It's a thought that was put into my head or a thought my brain thinks, but it's not actually truth. We'll talk about what I believe that, the only truth I believe with a capital T is love and especially self-love, right? There's no other truth other than there's no truth. I don't know, something. But yeah, those are some of the many, many lies that you just you don't even know are part of you because of your kid and all you know is all you know. And so I describe them as like the vines that circle the way around my brain and kind of hold it together. Didn't even know they were there. They were just part of me, I thought.
And it's so sad in reality, for a child to be in this case, in this scenario, filled with so many lies. And it seems like all of these lies are rooted not in love, but in shame or self-loathing. So growing up, what was it like experiencing life outside of the community when you finally left? How was it growing up in the outside world?
So first of all, yes to what you said, it was about shame, but the real mind thing is that they said it was love. Like this is
Mm.
God's ultimate love, right? And so when you take it in a shame, but you're told it's love, and a kid you believe it's love, it's just so I always say, people who talk about healing is like unraveling the onion, the layers of the onion. I'm like that, skein of yarn that you bought and you forgot to wrap into a ball. I don't know if you've ever worked with yarn and forgot to wrap it into a ball, but if you don't wrap it into a ball, it becomes this knot that takes 3 days to unravel, right? Because everything is intertwined and holding each other and down. And so all of that. And so what was unique about my situation, many things, but the fact that we believed, best friends with his kids, he was my Messiah, absolutely knew that to be truth, but lived outside with Satan, with my dad. So, I mean, even, it was awful. And it's probably also what helped me leave at some point because I did have something on the outside, even if it wasn't the best. But going back and forth, those two, I went and said to my brother, how did we do that? And he said, I don't know. I wasn't there. Right. We just were like, right. Because you live in sex, drug, squalor with the satanic lifestyle and you believe in the Messiah. It was crazy making. And then when I left, here's the story. When I give you the story of how I left, here's
Sure.
the story of how I left. So when I was 16, my dad sent me away to music camp for the summer to keep me away from the church because every other summer I've been with the church and my dad hated the church, never talked bad about it to his huge credit, but hated it. So he sent me away to music camp, never spent money on me, but did so I could go. And I became friends with people there who were queer for the first time knowingly to me, which is a huge sin in my puritanical cult. So I write my mom and I'm like, what should I do? These people are wonderful. They're my friends. And my mom writes back, they're evil, they're sinful. You can convert them or just stay away from them. They're not safe. And for the first time, I think, I don't know if I agree. They're wonderful people. And remember, if I think anything that's not truth, it's Satan in me. So I think, oh my God, Satan's in me because I think these people are good people. And I come back from music camp. And so I was best friends with Moon's kids, Moon's daughter, and also with blessed children. Those are the children born from the blessed marriages, the huge arranged marriages. They're born without original sin. There's a definite hierarchy. There's the true children, the children of the Messiah, who are as beyond special as anyone could be. There's the blessed children who are really special, and there's really sinful, awful, me. And I come back from music camp, and one of my blessed children friends, my 6-year-old friend, had been seduced by her Sunday school teacher. And in order for to keep anyone from noticing, she spread rumors about me. She told everyone that I wanted to have sex with all the men, all the brothers. And so Moon heard these rumors, believed these rumors, and made a decree that only blessed children could be with the true children in order to keep me away from his kid. So I go into my last year of high school and I know I'm invaded by Satan because I'm questioning. And I know the Messiah knows that I'm invaded by Satan because he banished me. And so I think, okay, like you're evil, you're sinful, all this, but you're questioning and you need to pull back a little bit so you can see life on the outside, so you can make a full decision as an adult, not as a 10-year-old, but as an adult 17-year-old to go in and never question again. And so I start hanging out, it's, on the weekends at home with my dad, and I start having more time with my friends in school. And I find, what do you know, more unconditional love and support there and fun. And I get very, very torn and very, very tormented. And then I get very, very drunk one night, very, very drunk one night, and a boy kisses me and I kiss him back and I have a boyfriend. And that's the hugest sin in our church, right? The fall of man was premarital sex. And I start dating him and all hell breaks out and everyone's questioning me on street corners and yelling at me and everybody's like, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. And I go off to university, I go off to Cornell, and I decide that I will break up with him and devote myself again to God and the Messiah, to my true father, to Moon. And I don't. And so what happens? So that's when I end up on the bridge and I almost jump off. But I don't. I managed to almost like skirt disaster and survive. And then my second year at university, I stopped eating and I was about 30, 35 pounds less than I am today. On my third year, I did a hell of a lot of cocaine, including with my dad's friend, the judge. And then my fourth year, I just started embarking in really destructive and not nice and abusive relationships until I found myself engaged to a relatively very, very mean alcoholic who worked for and partied with my father. And someone pointed me an Al-Anon, and that's when it like I began the shift of like, oh, maybe there's something not okay going on here. But I look back now and it's like I believed I was punishing myself for leaving and failing. I, did not know, again, I did not know the depths of the pain and the grief and the anger and the self-loathing and the all of that in me because I was just, I have a gift of being very functional, very overachieving, as you said. Yeah. Even like I had cancer 2 years ago. The end of this month is my 2 years end of chemo, cancer free. And even during chemo, I still looked fine. I mean, maybe not fine, but I still look strong because I have an ability to just be strong, gift and not gift. So yeah. So
So thank you for sharing all of these challenges and difficulties that you've been through. And we spoke about how many of these lies were rooted in hate or in shame.
yeah.
Although they said that it was love, but it's still is, it's shame. And how afterwards you've described how you perhaps it could be described as self-punishing,
Hmm.
self-destruction.
Hmm.
When did you come to the realization that you needed to write your book To the Moon and Back?
So when I crawled into Al-Anon and I started sharing my story in the rooms, qualifying, and I would tell the whole story, and people would be like, wow, you should write a book. Because it's, a weird, wacky, I'm learning to say that my childhood was tough, right? My therapist once said to me, it will get even easier for you when you finally admit how hard it was. And in the last year, I've been able to, all the little parts of me, the little child parts and the adult to be like, it really sucked and it was really hard. So everyone says you should write a book. And then, I'm a coach, been coaching for a very long time. And I still remember I was trying to get pregnant with my second child. I had 4.5 years of infertility to get there. And, I had been sick one day. I just remember this. And the next day I was like, I'm going to start writing. And I tried to write a half memoir, half self-help. Like, here's all the things that happened to me. Here's how they messed me up. I got better. You can too. And I still have them like all cut out and on the wall somewhere. I got wonderful rejections from so many agents. Your story is amazing. Your writing is pretty good. You cannot tell these two things, right? You're not famous enough. Where will they put you in Barnes and Noble? You can't do both of these. And then in 2009-ish, 2008, something that an agent contacted me and said, if you write a memoir, I will represent you. And I sat down and I wrote the memoir. And then she didn't take me on. And then it was like 8, 10 years of trying to find a way to get it published. It's a great story. So, when people say, well, was it healing to write the book or why did you write the book? this is me. I just did it. People say you should do it. And so I did it. And I mean, I had some realizations and I began to see some of the good in it, but I told my story so many times, it wasn't that healing to write it. And even as I said, I was still caught in some of the like, I'm damaged beliefs. And it was only as the book was coming out, or like after it came out, when I found again the cult survivor community, I went to an ICSA meeting. I met someone on Twitter who lived in Scotland who sent me to the ICSA meeting in Philadelphia. And I found second gens and I went to some workshop on second gens and they put like what it does to your brain up on the PowerPoint. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my brain. That's every fight I've had in my marriage. That's like, that's me. And I connected with people like you. And like you said, different cult, different country, different whatever, same carving inside. That again, I had a fuller realization of what it was, and I had a reason for the book that I'd already written, which is to spread a message of hope, right? Which is to say, as bad as it was, you are okay, you are beautiful, you are amazing, and it gets better. It's a lot of work, but it gets better, and you can have hope, and you can have love, and you can rewire, unwire, unplug, redo, change the crazy, stupid tapes that you needed to survive and that were given to you in order to keep you controlled. So, yeah. So it's been a real, yeah. And people are like, why did you write it? I'm like, because someone said I should, so I did. But in retrospect, there's a reason for it. That's the way I look at it.
So now I want to take a bit of a sidestep,
Yeah.
and because we're talking about, writing the book, getting into it. Um, but you were in a cult, and in cults, maybe not all cults, but many cults, what they do is they limit reading material. So I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious in knowing what was reading like inside of the cult? Were you allowed? Were you not allowed? And where did you find this talent or this gift that you could write a book? And it's a great book. I have it right here.
Thank you. I will say that I found that I mean, I always knew I like to do anything creative, and I used to write when I was young, when I was a kid. But I found that I loved writing and I loved editing and I loved the whole process, not the whole getting it published process, but the whole writing process and crafting it. I really, really love that. So I just feel lucky. Yeah, Frank McCourt was my teacher in high school, but that means nothing, right? It was before he was famous, but he taught at Stuyvesant where I went. Learned other things from him, but not necessarily how to write. Um, so you asked me a first, sorry, since the cancer and chemo, my brain kind of fritzes. You asked me a first question before that, and it was how did I learn to write or how did I want to write? And what was the other one?
Like what was the reading
Oh, the reading, right.
availability?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because the bite model, right? Stephen Hassan's bite model, extremist situations control your behavior, your information, your thinking, and your emotions. It wasn't that our reading was, it didn't feel like our reading was limited by the church. It felt like everything you took in was self-limited because you knew it was wrong.
Okay.
Right. So it wasn't in my experience, it wasn't like, do not read these books, but it was like, if I read those books, like that's Satan and I'm not going to read those books, I mean, like, again, I was friends with Moon's kids and, they would, come and see the rock band that I used to hang out with and they would start singing Cold as Ice. And I'd be like, oh, you can't sing that song. That's a bad song. Like that's evil. Don't do that. Right. It was, I mean, and I think that's even more powerful than banning books or saying something's not allowed because the self-policing of that is deeply wired, right? So I just knew that it was all, I could look at my dad and look at his life, right? It was all bad. And so, yeah, it wasn't, right? And this was well before the internet. This was well before anything like that. But like you knew that Moon knew that the newspapers were all Satan and all owned by Satan and communists, which is why he founded the Washington Times, which unfortunately is one of the big, big red newspapers in Washington, D.C. of all the Republicans and has been for decades. It's horrifying. So yeah, it wasn't you're not allowed to, but you knew it was bad. And again, you would break God's heart if you picked up the wrong book. Who wants to do that? I mean, I would go to Scotland and be part of these workshops for counselors about cults and stuff. And there was a JW, a Jehovah's Witness who grew up in Scotland. Again, carved the same on the inside. And the JWs have cartoons for kids. And there was this one cartoon where the kid is playing with some sort of action figure, and the mom is like, honey, like God really cries when you do that. Do you want to play with that? And the kid's like, no, I don't want to play with it. I don't like it. Right. And so not only do you not play with it, but you think that you've chosen to not play with it. So yeah, I
So
think Kohn was brilliant, a brilliant narcissist personally. So
so you were very limited, uh,
mm,
not banned, but you have this self-policing.
yeah.
When it came to writing your story, did you feel that you had kind of removed yourself from that self-policing, or did you find yourself still kind of censoring your story a bit during the writing process?
You know, Well, first of all, what I found fascinating is when I wanted to explain some of the divine principle, right? The truth that moon was given by Jesus. And when I went to research it so I could put it in the book, it still sounded true to me. Like it's like that again, the deep carving. I was once my older child goes to an activist temple in Minneapolis where they live, and I was there right around when they were reading Genesis chapter 2, and they were talking about all these things, and my brain is going, no, it's sex, it's premarital sex. Like I've been out for decades, and still my brain believes. So that was something I saw, right? I had to, and I didn't even realize how much, but I had to come to terms with how true it still felt to me. Like, so I mentally, it doesn't feel the same way now, but at that point, I mentally knew it wasn't true. Probably, right? It's kind of thing where I found that you talk to a lot of people who've left, and many of them still have but what if I was wrong, right? And when I
Mhm.
find out when I die kind of thing, because we don't know, right? So there was definitely that. And again, like if I were to write it now, I would write it differently. Yeah, because I didn't, it's not, it's not that I intentionally didn't break out of the constraints, it's that I didn't know I was still constrained, right? Go back to the how scarred and damaged and broken I am. I actually believe that not only when I lived it, but when I wrote it. So I can look back now and just, people have read the book and they're like, really, what's the harm? It doesn't sound that bad. It was maybe going to be made into a TV show. And my claim to fame is that Miley Cyrus read it, and one of my claim to fames. But she said, well, what was the harm if she didn't get out? Right. And so I did write my experience, and my experience did not include no, overt abuse. Right. But I probably didn't explain the mind shit control well enough for someone who hasn't experienced it, because I still was in it and I didn't realize it. And again, so I wrote it in the early 2000s and I left in the early 80s. Like, do the math. That's a lot of time to still not even know you're still believing some of it. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of this about your book, your life, being in the uh, Unification Church. Thank you
And
for
if it,
sharing about your experience. Now to start wrapping things up, I'd like to ask a question to my guest,
Mhm.
and that is, what is your truth that heals?
My truth that heals is that I can say I, or I can say we need to love ourselves, as is tattooed on my arm. I can't quite sure if it is my handwriting. First, most, and always, right? Love myself first, love myself most, love myself always and in always. It's really self-love and self-compassion, right? There's a lot of other truths, namely that there are no real exact truths. But I know that, I say when I have the guts to say it out loud, which is more and more, I'm in the midst of a beautiful love affair with myself. I really, I get shame slams with stuff, when I do things that are, trigger. I get trauma triggers. All that is true. But the loathing and revulsion doesn't happen. If it happens, it's like that second of like, "Ooh," and then you're like, oh yeah, that's not true. And that's only from my ability to love me, all the parts of me, yeah, with all my heart, and to learn to have boundaries. Boundaries are sacred. My therapist said that. I'm like, what? Like, have boundaries, have space, and know that I am okay. And like, I don't have to keep pleasing other people. I can just be here and take care of myself. So, long-winded way, first, most, and always. First, most, and always. I had
Thank,
people take pictures of my tattoo recently. It's great.
well, thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your truth that heals. And to close this, do you have any links where people can find you, people can check out your book?
Yeah, so my website, and it's all the same, is lisakohnwrites.com. So it's Lisa, and Kohn is weirdly Kohn, and then writes like the verb, WRITES.com. They can find me, they can email me, they can buy the book at my local bookstore, and I'll go and sign it for them. And all of my social media is Lisa Kohn Writes, Instagram, LinkedIn is separate. But yeah, but Instagram and Facebook, it's all Lisa Kohn Writes. And I love, love, love to hear from people because that's why I do this. I was gonna say, we're all in this together. It takes all of us to help heal each other. And my heart goes to anyone who's had any similar situation or feelings. And I'd love to be a support in any way.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for being on the show. And to the audience who have tuned in, please check out this book, To the Moon and Back, A Childhood Under the Influence by Lisa Kohn. Lisa, by Lisa by Lisa Kohn.
It is so perfect. No, that is the perfect way. I will say that the audiobook should be out very soon. It was supposed to be out at the beginning of the summer, so hopefully soon. But yeah, that was fun too to read that. But yeah, it's been wonderful to be here, Ryan. Absolutely wonderful. I don't care how you pronounce my name. It's great to spend time with you. Truly, 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 with all my heart. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Lisa. And to the audience, thank you so much.
thank you.